وختي دی چې نور مو دا وطن زخمونه وګنډو راشئ د مشکاتو دا سنن زخمونه وګنډو جوړي په وجود دا شل کلن زخمونه وګنډو ړنګ شولو جومات ابو دا اوس ګلان پې اور اخیست.
We're in Wardak province. There's a big celebration we've heard where a lot of Taliban fighters are coming from various different provinces to commiserate the loss of a lot of fighters over the last 20 years and also to celebrate their very speedy victory. So we've managed to get special permission for women to be allowed in for 10 minutes only so that we can see what's going on.
عزتمند مسلمانانو ډېر د خوشحالۍ ځای دی لله الحمد هغو سختیو او تکالیفو نه نن موږ تاسې د ازادۍ.
It's been 6 months since the Taliban swept to power. They're still celebrating that victory over the US and other foreign invaders. And they're keen to present the world with a glorified vision of how safe and harmonious things are now for Afghan civilians.
Constant stream of people coming in. It's a lot of Taliban leaders, Taliban fighters, as well as kids and local people who have come to celebrate. And now that Taliban are fully back in control, we're getting a lot of very disapproving stares from people for being the only women in here. Do you think that people's lives here are better now that the Taliban is in control of the whole country?
بله واقعا بهتر آرام آرامی ده بچه کار نلدی دست ندیش در سیلی پکور بانده طالب بلارده نه طالب در سیلی پکور بانده نده بلارد خود قانون اداری ده دین اداری امنیت ده.
درجات شهید متفاوت است. شهادتی که شجاعانه و آگاهانه در برابر در هم شکستن صفوف طاغوتی و استکباری دنیا بالاترین درجه‌ای است که پیش خدا می‌داشته باشه.
These are the orphan children of those fighters killed in battle, and they're being treated like celebrities.
How old were you guys when you lost your father? How did you lose them? What do you want to be when you grow up? Why?
We were taken to a room away from the crowd to speak with Commander Mohammed Ibrahim Tayyib, a security chief for the area.
What does it feel like for you personally to be free of the Americans?
موږ دا د یو خوشحالۍ احساس کو چې د موږ د مظلوم ملت د هغه ظالمانو نه خلاص شو. دا یو د خوشحالۍ احساس کو کنه موږ په دې خوښ وو چې دی ووژنو موږ په دې خوشاله یو چې موږ خپل ملک ازادي واخسته او زموږ مظلوم ملت او زموږ د مظلوم زنانه د دوی د ظلمونو خلاص شولې په دې باندې ډېر د خوښۍ هغه.
You spent the last 20 years fighting this war. I mean, now that you're in control of the government, do you feel like you're qualified? Do you feel like you're well equipped to controlling and running a country?
او الحمدلله موږ د ظرفیت په موږ کې ښه استعدادونه موجود دي ملت زموږ سره دی د ظرفیت په موږ کې شته دی چې د خپل حکومت چارې په مخ بوزو چې په خپل ملک یو ښه قانوني نظام نظم منځته راوړي.
I mean, I can't help but notice there's no women here. Are women happy?
زموږ نه ښځې خوشحاله دي. فعلا خو زموږ د امارات د وضعیت خو تاسو ته معلوم دی چې نوی حالت راغلی دی. زموږ په معاشره کې یا زموږ په کلتور کې ډېر د زنانو راوستل جلسو ته دا نشته دي. نو چې کله وخت مساعد شي او د موږ مشران په دې باندې بیا اخته دي چې هغه خپل ترتیب جوړ کړو.
When the Taliban ruled Afghanistan in the 90s, women were under de facto house arrest. Barred from schools and work, they were only allowed to leave home when escorted by male relatives and entirely covered. This time round, just as the Taliban seized control of the country, women have mostly disappeared from public life. Billboards showing women's faces have been blacked out. Restrictions on women's work and education have been implemented. And many of the hard-fought freedoms over the last 20 years have suddenly vanished. Female protesters who've tried to speak out have quickly been shut down, forcing them to demand their rights from indoors.
میتواند با استعداد، با فهم، عالم، دکتر، انجینیر تربیت بکند تا مصدر خدمت در جا نبوده باشد.
And yet the Taliban government now ruling over the country insists that the systems they've put in place are working for all Afghans. There's no better place to see that system in action than in the local courts.
So we've managed to get into this Taliban courthouse, which is super informal. People from this district are coming here to make their complaints and their issues heard, and the judge is ruling over them right now. You know, this is the only form of justice system now left in the country, and it's entirely ruled by their interpretation of Sharia law.
اوس دای داسې وایي چې زه شریعت غواړم په دې کې کور کې
د دوړې کې په دوه مزاکې ته نه راستي یو میټر یې د روغه د مونږ درې ځای کمزوري وسه.
Judge Iftikhar Samila presides over the Taliban courtroom in Wardak province. He's responsible for issuing fatwas for how Afghans should be living their lives and presiding over all legal cases in the area.
So what kind of guidelines are you giving people for in terms of how they should be living here?
د لباس په حق کې قرآن چې هدایت کو چې ښځې باید داسې لباس واغوندي چې هغه جلب د نظر د خلکو ونه کړي او قرآن کریم مطلب یې د ښځو دپاره چې وقرن فی بیوتکن په خپلو کورو کې کښېنئ او میړه د تاسې د رزق او د هغه ذمهدار دی باید رزق او نفقه هم په میړه باندې د هغه باید درک کړو.
What happens if women don't want to abide by these new rules? I mean, they don't want to cover themselves, they don't want to stay at home, they don't want to be invisible.
چیرې ښځه دا ونه غواړي چې هغه په کور کې پاتې شي یا حجاب محفوظ نه کړو نو بیا به هغه یو لوڅ دیګ شي مګای به هم ورلویږي مچ به هم ورلویږي هر شی به ورلویږي نو محفوظه به نه وي.
What kind of cases are women coming to you for?
د ښځو موضوعګانې ډېرې نه رسي دوې درې دانې کیله راغلي په ټول کال کې خو مشکلات نشته دي ډېر مشکلات نشته د ښځو حقوق خوندي دي محفوظې دي.
You think it's because women's rights are secure under the Taliban that they're not coming to you? It's not because they're scared?
د حقوقو د خوندیتوب په خاطر باندې کې نه بل زموږ ته ورځ موضوع راغله ښځه او مشکل یې و د میړه سره دلته چې موږ خلک څه وغږول د دوی خپل مشکل په مابین کې نه او نورو خلکو بس مشکل هم یې حل کړ ولاړل بېغمه خپل ژوند.
The judge was adamant that Afghan women are safer now, thanks to the strict judicial system being rolled out across the country. He took us to the local jail, where the Taliban had recently detained suspected criminals.
What are you guys here for?
د نجلۍ تښتول یې ده هلته موږ نیولی دی پلار ملار یې خبر و.
And this person allegedly stole something. How old are you?
18.
He looks so young. What did he steal?
د پیسې غلا کړي دي کور نه پیسې.
So if he's found guilty of stealing, he will have his hand cut off?
او لاس قطع کړي چیرې هغه موانع د قطع نه وي.
Hi, you speak English?
Yes, they bring me from this village by nothing.
No.
Please ask him why they bring me.
This young man, who we'll call Bismillah, had something to tell us. But with so many Taliban guards surrounding us, he was clearly nervous.
You don't want to talk here? I can see why.
Bismillah would soon be released without charges, just a couple days after our visit. But this wasn't the last time we heard from him.
So we just received a pretty surprising phone call from the guy that we met inside the Wardak jail when we were with the judge there. He's saying that he has some important information that he really wants us to know, but he's very, very nervous to meet us. He's asked us to go to a secure location.
Bismillah wanted to share his story, but asked us not to show his face. We learned that it was Bismillah's sister who came to the judge seeking a divorce from her husband. It's because of her case Bismillah believes that he was imprisoned.
The last time we saw you, you were in prison. So do you feel like they brought you there to put pressure on your family involving this case?
بله مرا برای این خاطر مرا آورده بودن که سر ما فشار بیارن
تا ما فیصله نظامی را قبول کنیم.
The story Bismillah tells us, which is corroborated by court documents and other family members, is complex. But it starts simply enough. Several years ago, Bismillah's sister married a man who we'll call Abdullah. They had 7 children together. But Abdullah was violent. He beat her repeatedly, breaking so many bones and injuring her so severely that she frequently wound up in hospital. Then he married another woman and kicked Bismillah's sister out of their home.
یام اکسری از بینیشان است که بینیش مایده کرده بودن.
Oh wow.
This X-ray of the broken hand.
Oh, here's the break.
Yeah. This was another X-ray of another hand.
Oh my gosh. How many bones has she broken?
2 hands, 1 nose, 1 head.
Oh, this is the picture of the top of her head?
Yeah, the top of.
It's really badly smashed in.
Bismillah's sister went to the court in Kabul, which at the time was being run by the previous Afghan government. She told the court how she'd been beaten. Witnesses came to support her story. The judge ruled that the couple should be separated. But Abdullah refused the divorce and instead fled to Wardak province, where he couldn't be forced to sign the divorce papers. Abdullah became a member of the Taliban. He then filed a complaint in the Taliban court there, and Bismillah's sister was summoned. Judge Iftikhar, the man we met, doubted her story. Taliban fighters then returned her to Abdullah's house, where he beat her again.
یک فیصله عرفیشان است. 1 سال میشه از این فیصله.
So what does it say?
او دا باید هغې سره خپل ژوند وکړي. این فیصله شد. بعد از این فیصله باز سرش مایده کردن.
It seems like under the previous Afghan government that your sister was close to getting her divorce, her husband was close to getting convicted for abuse. Do you think that now that the Taliban have taken over, that her husband has more power than he did before?
بله گفتم میتونم چرا نه. برای ما بسیار مشکل است به خاطر که یک موقعش باز هم برای شوهرش چند دفعه فهماندیم که همین کار نکنه. هم قسم ظلم خوب نیست.
Abdullah denies any charges of abuse, and the case has now been escalated to a higher court. But claims of gender-based violence like these are not unique. About 87% of Afghan women and girls face abuse in their lifetime, according to Human Rights Watch. Over the last 20 years, the desperate circumstances faced by many Afghan women became justification for US involvement in the country. Secretive shelters offering refuge for victims of domestic violence have appeared across Afghanistan.
As far as taking the picture is concerned,
Of course.
I don't want faces to be shown and not too much information, please. Too much information will destroy us. You're going to not only kill me, but kill 29 women and children. I want you to know that.
Mahbooba Siraj is a women's rights activist who runs the Safe House for Women. It's the first time since the takeover that she's allowed media inside. Most shelters like this have closed, but Mahbooba is determined to keep things going, despite running the risk of retaliation by a conservative society who view them as brothels for sinful women.
I'm very much خدا وقت میشه. اینجا. 4-5 ماه میشه اینجا. All right. خوب خواستی. شکرس. All right.
Seems everyone's very, very attached to you.
Well, you know, they know I care for them, we love them.
What kind of reasons is it that women and girls are coming here?
Violence against them in the family, violence against them by their husbands, by their brothers, by their family members, by just violence altogether. And they're all coming here because they run away from home and they cannot go anywhere else.
How much of an issue is violence against women in Afghanistan?
Huge, because I do believe that 40 years of war in a country can really do some damage on the psyche of human beings. As you know, brought about generations of very, very, very disturbed and violent men.
20 years ago when the US came here, one of their priorities they proclaimed was women's rights.
Yeah.
How do you feel that the international community has left Afghan women now? What's their situation?
The international community left Afghan women the same way they left Afghanistan. Like a hot potato. Burned their hands, dropped it. We've been dropped. They couldn't care less for the Afghan women. They couldn't care less to what happened to the Afghan people. They couldn't care less. And this is a fact, and I will scream it from the highest mountain in this world. But I'm counting. I'm counting on humanity. I'm counting on women.
It must be an unbelievable amount of pressure on you. I can tell how attached you are to these women, how attached they are to you. But it's a lot of pressure to keep these women safe.
At times it's very hard. Really hard. Because I keep on thinking, okay, if we are not around, what's going to happen to them? You know, it's hard.
One 22-year-old woman, who we'll call Fatima, has been here for 4 years. She came from an area where the Taliban have maintained control for the last 10 years and said that she had nowhere else to run to.
ما یکی نیم ساله بودن که پدری ما فوت کرد مرد دیگه مرد پیش بیادران دارم موندم دیگه و بیادرای ما ساله بودم مرد داده یک 80 ساله مردکه زاده ما 100 گوسپند 120 گوسپند بود 50,000 پیسه داد چی باید و به ما پسر پیدا کنی دیگه زنی ما نمیتونی پسر پیدا کنی ما که تو رو گرفتم به خاطر پسر گرفتم چی با ما بچه و پسر لطکوب میکرد میگه چرا ما که تو رو آوردن در خانه باید الان ما یک امید میداشتن چی دیگه تا با ما یک بچه یک دختر پیدا میکنه چرا او که به ما رو میزد اما خطر ما رو میزد.
Fatima was just a child when she was so severely injured by her husband repeatedly raping and beating her that she was taken to hospital. They treated her, but her husband refused to pay the hospital bill and fled. Then her brothers remarried her to another abusive man. Her first husband was furious when he returned years later and found that she had married someone else. He went to the Taliban court, which operated in the shadows at the time, and accused her of adultery.
So people within the Taliban and the Taliban courts sentenced you to death by stoning?
میخواسته به دیگه زنه پینات بیتی مرا بکشی دیگه زنه مرا ببینی دیگه زنه دولت نری و خودشم زنگ میزد و خودشم گفت که من تو رو میارم سنگسار میکنم دیگه بس یک قاضی صاحبم رای مزیت کمک کرد خیر ببینی نمیشه نمیگیرم پس و زندگی مرا نجات داد مرا نموند پس برم.
Do you think if it wasn't for that judge that you wouldn't be here today?
بله اگه او قاضی به من نمیگفت دیگه ما تسلیم ما گرفت دیگه ما در دنیا نمی بودم. وقتی دوستای ما که طالبان ما در سرشو اما مرگ مرا تسلیمش گرفته بود حالا خودشم آمده تو به فکر دیوانه شده هستم نه شو خو دارم نه روزه دارم دیگه هم نمی‌فهمم چی شد.
We tracked down the female judge who intervened in Fatima's case by taking it out of the Taliban court system and ruling that her second marriage was lawful.
که بله شوهر ازی ایره کتک میزد میشه با ایروی خوب نداشت خشونت میکرد گفت میبرم تو جا پیش طالبا که تو را سنگسار کنن.
You're in hiding right now. Are you scared about the fact that now the Taliban are in control and the people that you put behind bars are now out on the loose?
و به خصوص که ما رئیس محکمه بودیم اکثر قضایای خانمای از اینا که به اثر خشونت‌های از اینا و ما اکثر قضایای امینا را زنایشون را تفریق کردیم یعنی طلاق دادیم ازشون جدا کردیم ما بود رد پای مرا پیدا کنن و کدام ضرر برسانن برای فامیلم برسانن از اون خاطر من خیلی نگران هستم.
Just a few months ago, judges like this ruled over cases like Fatima's by implementing the Elimination of Violence Against Women Act, a hard-won law that criminalized gender-based violence. But now that hundreds of female judges themselves are in danger, that leaves very few options for women who face abuse. Back in Wardak a couple weeks later, Bismullah's sister's divorce case has been stalled, along with hopes of justice being served.
The judge is ruling over a number of cases and he's just about to announce his verdict. On this case, this guy in the green vest has been accused of setting fire to a truck.
حاجی سروار چې مدعی بالوکالت د دو محکمې ته شاهدان راوستل د پاره د اثبات خپل دعوا نو هغه سیری تسکیه هم وشوله په سیری تسکیه کې هم د شاهدان عدل او مقبول شهادت بلل شوي وو.
So the last time that I saw you, you told us about a divorce case. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that case and what happened and what you think should happen?
طلاق موضوع خو موږ فیصله وکړله د موږ فیصلې نه وروسته یوه جانب مرافعه وغوښته اوس لاړل مرافعې ته موږ نه لوړه چې کومه محکمه ده په هغه محکمه کې
And what was it that you decided here at this court?
فیصله داسې وه چې مدعي دعوه د طلاق کړې وه د وهلو یې کړې وه هم د ویلو شاهدان وو نه د طلاق شاهدان وو هېڅ شی نه وو اوس دې مدعي علیه ته قسم راجع کړو موږ قسم وکړو چې ما ویل نه دي کړي موضوع خلاصه کړله.
So because the husband has sworn that he didn't do it, that counts for more than the fact that this woman is saying that she was repeatedly beaten. She has scans of, broken bones, broken nose, broken arms.
مات نو لاس پښه نه مات بيخي هېڅ شی نه مات کوم ادعا چې ښځې کړې وه هغه نه شواهد یې لرل.
Where do you think that women who are in abusive relationships should go for help?
نو حق ظلم خو نشته دی هغه د خلکو ادعاوې دي چې که چیرې ښځه او میړه په هغو حقوقو سره وچلي نو ټول شی خوندي او محفوظ دي.
Do you think that it can ever be justified for a man to beat his wife?
بیا ویل دومره ویل چې شنه نه شي اثر د ویلو یې په ښکاره نه شي که چیرې شنه شي قاضي ته ولاړه شي عریضه وکړه قاضي د دې پوښتنه کوي چې ولې شنه ده.
Should women be allowed to do your job and preside over cases and to determine what justice is?
قضاوت په ښځه لږ بوج وي قضاوت د ښځې لپاره نشته چې قاضي شي.
Why?
ښځو نقصان عقل او دین دواړه شته دی که نه.
Though the Taliban have vowed to respect women in this iteration of their governance, their interpretation of what that means has raised alarm. When a woman's place is at the home, education can feel pointless. 6 months on, those in charge have deemed that it's still not safe for girls over the age of 12 to return to school at all.
So this is the Ashiana Centre where a lot of disadvantaged kids are brought from the streets or have been orphaned to get educated. It goes all the way through from right down to little kids through to high school. Right now, although kids are still coming in, there's fewer and fewer older girls coming in. That's because the Taliban have ordered all boys in high school to come back to get educated, but they haven't yet said what happens to girls. And that is causing a lot of anxiety here.
Nabila Aziz Nouri studied here herself as a kid. She's been teaching for the last 4 years, but says that girls' attendance has recently plummeted.
Are they aware of the situation at the moment?
Yes.
خبر هستن کلشان میبینن میاین از خانه تا اینجا به تلویزیون ده هر چی
طالبا کلنجره خود تیر میشه بیراقه خود دچاره زده این جایا را گرفته تا روزان آمده بودیم دان آشیانه بودن با مشکل از خانه تا اینجا
What is it that you're worried about?
تشویشی را دارم که ما درس ما را بند نکنم آیندی ما جور کنم
برای هم مثل بچه ها درس بخونن تحصیل کنن و زمان که طالبا آمدن ما آینده خوب نمیبینیم زیاد دوباره نمیکنیم ما بتانیم مثل سابق دوباره هم فعالیت هایی که انجام میدادیم باید انجام بدیم مثل سابق باید بیاییم قیودات نباشه یعنی سابق میایم با او روحیه با او یک امید آرزوی کالج همون بیا برو فقط این کدام امید با این نداره.
Across the country, boys of all ages are getting educated. In Kandahar, the spiritual heartland of the Taliban, enrollment for madrasas are higher than ever. We sought permission to enter one of these religious schools, which the mullah in charge allowed on the condition that I was completely covered.
اسونه بدکار نو ولې کیمره کې نه زنانه خو یوازې ما سره مو پرېږدي نو
The mother doesn't want to be seen walking with me.
راځي
Oh, wow. Wow, there's so many kids. So many children. You can hear these sounds all across the school in different classrooms. These boys have been up for the last 5 hours reciting the Quran, and this is what they do every day that they're here. Very, very committed.
The Taliban consider themselves religious scholars. Now that they're in control, they lean on mullahs to help guide their decisions. This mullah was arrested many times under the previous government for his close ties with the Taliban leadership in the area, who he now meets with once a week. After a lot of negotiations with my male colleagues, he eventually allowed me into his office.
سید وکم مخلص کی و نو خو هغه مخ ناس نو بیا سترګې به دې مړې نیولې
They're discussing whether I can take my veil off. Am I allowed to take my burqa off?
سید ورته
He will not look at me?
Yeah. Can show your face.
Okay, if you'd like to take a seat here and then you'll be talking to my translator behind me.
دا برقه هلته یې کښېږده ځینې لرې بیا کیمره کې راغی
It's very hot in these things. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you for sitting down with me. Can you tell us what the role of mullahs are in this new Taliban government?
او کوم څوک چې په درس کې پاته دي هغه د انبیاو وارثین دي د دې قوم او د دې ملت پیشوایان او مقتدایان او امامان دي.
So over the last 9 years or so that you've had this place, how many times has it been targeted?
د دې دغه یو ګشت امنیتي ملي والا راغلي دي هغه امنیتي ملي ځای ته زه غوښتی یم او طالبان مو بندیان سوي دي.
And do many of your students want to join the Taliban?
زیاتره افغانان غواړي زیاتره نه اکثره یې غواړي کوم څوک چې نه غواړي هغه دې هیواد نه ځي. طالبان په 20 کاله کې په وروستنیو کلونو کې بیخي ټولو ته ثابته وه چې دې وطن ته وفادار.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of people who support the Taliban. There are also a lot of people who don't and are terrified about their rights being rolled back and are also now living in fear.
څنګه چې انسانان رنګونه مختلف دي هغسې یې او هسې خو دلته چې کومه امریکایان او ناټو راغلل هم داسې خلک وله چې امریکایان او ناټو یې نه غوښته نتیجه یې داسې وله.
You've reluctantly let us in, covered. You're not looking directly at me. What role do you think women have in Afghan society?
زما نظر خو دا دی چې طالبان او ګوري د طالبان حکومت چې اوس کوم قایم دی دوی په دغه شانو باندې ډېر جدي غبرګون نه ښیي د زنانو د حجاب په باب باندې عام خبریالان یې سوالونو کې مخ ته راوړي. طالبان به جدي غبرګون نه وښیي یو دا وي چې نو طالبان په هغه باندې طبعا جدیت ښیي ځکه طالبان غواړي اسلام.
This mullah, who has significant power, is advocating for stricter societal rules, which seems like a strange priority given the current state of the country. Just down the road from the madrasa is the border with Pakistan, where the mullah himself has spent several years studying. Though he's returned, thousands of others are desperately trying to escape.
So many people are trying to get over the border, and the Taliban police are trying to control people to stop them from crossing. Everyone's showing us passports, everyone's showing us documents. Why is the border shut?
طالبان بده کړی دا خلک ظلم کوي
ملیشیا والا ظلم
کوي افغانان سره ټول سره ظلم کوي دا ډیر ظلم شروع دی ټول یو ورځ نه ده نه دوه ورځې دي هر ورځ د حال
7 years I'm waiting here 7 days people sick people my mom whole sick
Why is it you can't get treatment here in Afghanistan?
The abrupt change of government and concerns over the Taliban's treatment of women and other minorities has led foreign governments to freeze aid coming into the country, rapidly escalating the humanitarian crisis into the world's worst. Women and children are some of the most vulnerable.
How many days have you been here for? Have you tried going to the hospitals here, going to see the doctor? How has the situation for you changed in the last couple of months since this change of government?
This woman is not alone. 95% of Afghans currently don't have enough to eat. At a nearby hospital, the staff are overrun with those who are desperately malnourished.
لباس نیسته که بیا ولته د ډاکټر صاحب تلي وزن کوي ښه که چیرې دی وږي و یا سوی تغذیه و بیا موږ دلته دی بستر و سمه ده سمې کاکو ایسته د مخ سره دغه 15.3 کېجې د پرې دغه باندې ما درته ولیکه ښه اوس یې قدم وګوره څو دی دا ستا مریض بستر غواړي دا سوی تغذیه کې راځي دلته موږ خپل شجي ورکوو سمه ده مور کله چې شجي ورکړه چې مرض یې لږ چاق شو وزن یې واخیستې بیا تاسو ته پرېږدو
This hospital is struggling to deal with the soaring number of daily admissions. Pediatric specialist Nazir Ahmed says they'll soon be running out of beds and supplies.
Seems very busy here today.
We have a lot of patients and every day we have a lot of problem here. بستر مو د مریضانو لوډ ډیر دی تاسو وګورئ پر هر کټ 3 4 5 مریض پراته دي دلته چې د مریضان دي ټول سوی تغذیه دي severe acute malnutrition.
There's so many babies in here. How much have the numbers increased this year versus last year?
مثلا تیر کال کم او شش کال د مریضان ډیر شوي دي غربت بیکاري او دا شی ډیر شوی دی سیدي او دلته دا مریضان هم اتمنو سره ډیریږي.
Have you seen the numbers increasing in the last couple of months?
بالکل په دغه اوس نو اخري میاشت کې دغه تقریبا د شپږ میاشتې نه په دې خوا او روز مرم ډیریږي یعنی په تیر ژمي کې په هر د ژمي په موسم کې د دې ماشومان شمیر کم وي خو سږ کال ګوري د ژمي هوا ماله سړه ده د دې ماشومان شمیر زیات وي هغه ورځ په ورځ چې کېږي شمیر یې ډیریږي او کمیږي نه
This women want to show us. How did the mother die? How old is he? 2 months. What's the problem with him now? You must be so worried.
This mother has just lost one of her children to severe malnutrition. She's now fighting for the life of her baby Fafula.
This is your baby? And how old is he?
6 months.
6 months. He's absolutely tiny. Have you been able to get enough food for yourself and for your family, or has that been a problem? What's the doctor said?
This is the heartbreaking reality of Afghanistan today. It's being overseen by an all-male government that for the last 20 years has been used to fighting an insurgency. Now they find themselves facing urgent pleas for help from their own people.
This country right now is facing a humanitarian crisis. People are literally starving to death. Healthcare centers are overrun. How are you tackling that?
ستونزه دا چې اوس موږ ډېر وایلو کې ډېر نوی راغلو دغه کې لږ ستونزه وه په دغه باندې بوخت یو انشاءالله دوام به نه کوي ورو ورو به ټول وضعیت سم شي.
I mean, that sounds like a very optimistic outlook.
خوشبینه ځکه یو چې موږ اوس ته جنګ راوتلي یو افغانستان کې ډوم باید په جنګ ډېر مصرف کېږي اوس د جنګ مصارف ټول سپمول کېږي.
I mean, a lot of the funds coming into this country have been paused, and that's because the international community is unable to recognize the Taliban government because of your terrible human rights abuses happening here. Will you ever compromise on what your interpretation of very strict Islamic law is?
شریعت باندې موږ پیګو عادي موږ دین د عقیده ده او موږ زده کړې کړې په شریعت کې.
But surely to recognize the Taliban government, I mean, it's as simple as just putting systems in place, I mean, and being clear on what the specifics are. For example, say when girls are going to go back to school, provide equal rights for men and women, get rid of some of the draconian applications of Sharia law.
اصلي موضوع دا ده چې هغه مسایل چې د افغانستان د داخلي موضوعات د افغانستان د ملي ګټو سره تړلي دي افغانستان د باورونو عقیدې او اسلامي ارزښتونو سره تړلي دي خو له نړۍ نه غواړو چې د افغانستان اصول او باورونو او عقیدې ته درناوی وکړي.
Afghanistan is consistently ranked the worst place to be a woman. Under the previous government, any form of abuse towards women was deemed a criminal act. Under the new Taliban courts, will that still be the case?
نه تاسو اوس هم کولی شئ ښار کې پوښتنه وکړئ چې کومې ښځې ازار او اذیت کېدې مخکې دا اوس هم نشته له دې څخه به موږ نور هم د ښځو دپاره امن چاپېریال جوړ کړو.
I mean, that's not true. Women are still getting abused, and you haven't really answered my question in that will there be a law in place where it is a criminal act to abuse a woman?
چې دوی ځورول کېږي دوی سره زیاتی کېږي داسې راپورونه چې موږ راغلي موږ نه دي لاسته کړي او که داسې یو ځای پیدا شي او د شکایت وشي موږ ډېره زر رسیدګي کوو.
I mean, I don't think that's true. I think a lot of the women that we spoke to were severely abused and extremely traumatized. You have a daughter. Do you think that she deserves equal rights when she grows up to be a woman?
نه ښځې ته ځان ته حقوق دي په شریعت کې او نارینهو ته ځان ته حقوق دي موږ 50 قانون موږ نه لرو.
Accountability for what's happening to half of Afghanistan's population is hard to come by. There's a clear and widening disconnect between those in power and the women faced with the day-to-day heartache on the ground. The humanitarian catastrophe exacerbates all that. The UN estimates that 97% of Afghans may fall below the poverty line this year. 1 million children could die of starvation.
There's 2 women that have just been rushed in here, both of them with complicated pregnancies, but these women are running around with such limited resources to help deliver the babies safely. Are both of these cases problematic pregnancies.
دو مشکل است پریمیپر است اردوشان کم خون است از همین خاطر مشکل است.
What problems does that cause when you're giving birth?
وقتی که اکسیژن مادر خود کم میشه به اشتوک چی برسانه؟ خود می اکسپکسیا یگان وقت تاخور دماغی به بین میره یگان وقت بخی اشتوک از بین میره. فرصة الشابس حرام شو شابس خور تنقسم
تنقدر كاخوري
آفرین او دام ولودی دام آفرین ماشاءالله ماش حالا چکورک خالش سنگ ساساس خور برعکس بکشنه دیونی سه شابس بکشنه دی بیونی سه دبل مریستم دو وکم.
Is the baby okay?
خوب است نرمال است ولی وزنش کم است ضعیف است که تقریبا نرمال است و صحیح ما خوب ولی تو خوب نرمال نیست وزنش کم است خو قدش ماشاءالله خوب نرمال است 50 سانتی متر است. یک قدر گوش پیدا نمیشه ما ایران ماندیم این واکسن چی رقمه بزنم گوره چی دردی نیما تو گوره تلفانی دای سواقه بله سواقه جا بل سواقه آفرین وز دو چینگ ستماکو برونو دی چینگ کلاس رکه بس یو ستماکو بالا کات لاسته آفرین
This poor woman.
آفرین
She's in so much pain.
شاباس هلا تكورك بس كلمة واحدة خور كلمة واحدة دوا خورة توك بيبي خلاص بس تكورك خلاص
So relieved, so happy, healthy baby.
بله دكتور صاحب.
Oh my God.
شوفوا دكتور صاحب شايف خيري دكتور صاحب شوفوا إذا توقفتين.
This woman is literally delivering babies, having to take phone calls, managing this entire maternity ward. She's unbelievable. Thank God, two crying healthy babies. Amazing.
بسیار خوب است انسان که زحمت میکشه به نتیجهش هم ببینه زحمت که بکشم یک نتیجه خوب داشته باشم میما یک نتیجه بسیار خوب میدانم.
Now that these girls are here, thank God, what kind of future do you think that they face in Afghanistan?
والا اگر درباره جنسیتش فکر کنم بگم که دختر به دنیا آمده از این میال ما برش جگر خون میشم که به افغانستان به دنیا آمده فقط دختر زنده می باشه زندگی سالم نداره 4 سال که ما زندگی کردم هیچ دختر خوشدل ندیدم دیگه اینا هیچ امیدی ندارم.
What does life look like for these girls who will grow up to be women in this new Afghanistan?
ما فقط برای این قدر گفتم میتونم که در خانه کلان میشم چشمای پود نه مکتب خونده میتونه نه چیز زیاد کرده میتونه نه مو زندگی اشی خود بدل کرده میتونه نه به دل خود یک جای رفته میتونه فقط که 15 ساله میشه با شوی داده میشه اون فقط اولاد میاره خلاص دیگه مفهوم زندگی زمین رقم است.